She sat quietly in the courtroom, her hands folded over a stack of documents, her face calm but her eyes stormy with emotions. Clara Langston had never imagined her life would come to this, a courtroom showdown against the man she had loved for nearly 2 decades. But there she was, on one side of the courtroom, while on the other side sat Richard Langston, her husband, dressed in a sleek navy blue suit, smiling smugly. And next to him, clinging to his arm like a trophy, sat his much younger, glamorous mistress, Emma. Richard leaned back comfortably in his seat, whispering into Emma's ear, making her laugh lightly, completely unfazed by the courtroom setting. He didn't even glance once toward Clara. To him, she was a closed chapter, someone he had outgrown. He thought this trial was just a formality, a final stamp before he walked off into a new life of luxury, love, and freedom. But Clara wasn't here to go down quietly. The bailiff announced the judge's arrival. The courtroom rose in silence as the judge entered, a composed elderly woman with silver hair and sharp eyes. She took her seat and looked across the room, letting her gaze settle briefly on each party. "You may be seated," she said firmly. Clara's attorney stood up. "Your Honor, we are here today not just to finalize a divorce, but to correct a great injustice. My client gave up everything for this marriage, her career, her inheritance, her time, and her heart. In return, she received betrayal, deceit, and abandonment." Richard's lawyer chuckled quietly and stood to reply. "With all due respect, Your Honor, Mr. Langston has been the sole provider of this marriage. His wife chose not to work. She stayed home by her own choice. She did not contribute to the business empire he built." Clara looked down briefly, biting the inside of her cheek to stay calm. It wasn't the first time someone tried to erase her. The judge nodded slowly. "I've reviewed both parties' filings, and I'd like to ask a few clarifying questions." She turned to Richard. "Mr. Langston, is it true you built Langston Enterprises entirely on your own?" Richard straightened up, smiling. "Yes, Your Honor. I started from scratch. My wife had no involvement in the company." The judge raised an eyebrow. "No involvement at all. She was a homemaker. A great mother. But the business was all me." Clara's attorney stepped forward with a file. "Your Honor, may I submit Exhibit D? These are financial records, email correspondence, and signed statements showing that Mrs. Langston donated her entire inheritance, $500,000, to the company in its early days. She also worked as interim CFO for over a year during a fraud scandal, and she managed all the logistics when the business was run out of their home." The judge flipped through the documents, pausing at key pages. "Interesting. And Mr. Langston, were you aware your wife is listed as co-founder on your company's original registration?" Richard froze. Emma turned to look at him, confused. The judge didn't stop there. "Also, according to these records, the children's full-time care, home management, and even your personal finances were managed by Mrs. Langston for over 15 years. Yet you claim she contributed nothing." Richard shifted uncomfortably. I didn't mean nothing. I meant, not to the company's profit side." The judge closed the file slowly and removed her glasses. "Let me remind you, Mr. Langston, marriage is a partnership. While you were building profits, she was building your foundation." Clara looked up, her eyes meeting the judge's. For the first time in months, she felt seen. The courtroom was silent. The judge cleared her throat. "This court finds that Mrs. Clara Langston was not only instrumental in the foundation and growth of Langston Enterprises but also made significant personal and financial sacrifices for the well-being of her husband and children. Therefore, I rule that she is entitled to 70% of all joint marital assets, including a controlling interest in Langston Enterprises, full custody of the children, and ownership of the primary residence." Richard jumped up. "What? 70%? That's absurd. She's taking everything." The judge's tone was ice cold. "No, Mr. Langston. She's taking back what was already hers." Emma looked visibly uncomfortable now, slowly letting go of his arm. The confidence on Richard's face had completely melted away. The judge concluded, "You walked in here smiling, Mr. Langston, confident that your wealth and charm would win the day. But the court doesn't reward arrogance. It rewards truth." Clara stood up slowly, clutching her documents. She didn't smirk, didn't look at her husband, didn't say a word. With dignity, she turned and walked out of the courtroom. As she stepped into the hallway, the bright light from the windows flooded over her. Outside, reporters rushed to her, but she ignored the microphones and cameras. For the first time in a long time, she was free, not just legally, but emotionally. She had walked into that courtroom as the abandoned wife, and walked out as a woman who reclaimed her story. Back inside, Richard slumped in his seat, looking at the envelope in the judge's hands, the same envelope that carried the ruling which changed everything. He came to court to win. But she came to be heard. And justice, this time, listened.